let's get stretchy. If you are human of any sort who likes to move or not, and you aren't doing any type of fascial fitness or fascial elasticity and plasticity stretching, you gotta get on it. I have noticed such a huge difference in just how my body feels, how it moves as a unit, in my stiffness or lack thereof. So I love incorporating some type of fascia work into my weekly routine or even my daily routine. It doesn't have to be super strict. Just kind of move when you can. But let's talk about it. So the three main sources that I'm using to make this video is, number one, going to PT school for 3 years. Number two, this book, Fascia in Sport and Movement. And then number three is Dylan Werner. He makes these, he's a yoga teacher, but on this app called Allo Moves, he has made an elasticity and a plasticity, like 5 different videos in each category. And I purchased them a couple years ago, use them 2 or 3 times a year, like in that strict schedule, but otherwise I just incorporate the moves he has shown us like on a daily or weekly schedule, and super good. So fascia has become quite a buzzword in the past couple years, and for good reason. It's super important, but it has existed forever, and taking care of it has been important forever. But let's talk about kind of the simple background about what fascia is. So fascia is a connective tissue made mostly of collagen, and it's kind of like interwoven, like almost like a sweater intertwined, and it wraps around every single muscle, organ, your nerves, your vasculature. It just creates a sheath throughout your whole body to protect it, to help it glide better. And instead of just being individual, like I have a fascia around my bicep, it's actually intertwined. Your whole body has about 5 major fascial lines. So you have the superficial front line, which includes some arm in there. You have the superficial back line. You have your lateral lines. You have your spiral and functional lines, like rotational, which wrap around. And then you have your deep front line, which includes a lot more of the deep core stuff. So it's important to work into the properties of stretching your fascia, which is kind of a misconception, because a lot of fascial stretching, you're not actually changing the structure, you're changing the way your brain is able to loosen up, I guess. I'm gonna try to explain that a little bit better. So your fascia is actually incredibly strong. Your IT band along the outside of your thigh here, that is an example of fascia, and it's so strong you cannot stretch it, you cannot pull it, you cannot break it. That's why when you foam roll your IT band, you're not actually loosening up the fascia, the connective tissue itself. There's a lot of research going on, so I'm not gonna try to explain what the perfect number one answer is, but something with the way we move, or if someone touches us, that sensation on your skin, or the way we breathe, those have mechanoreceptors, which send information to your brain, and that tells your body or your muscle tension, it tells you to relax essentially, and lengthen and stretch. So when you don't do that, you get really stiff, you can get adhesions, things just don't move as well. If you take care of your fascia, that's also been shown to help with pain, help with performance, help with injury prevention, because it's really like elastic and it can withstand a lot of force and then kind of emit and transmit that force. So when it's healthy, you're more unstoppable, which is great. The bottom line is that it helps, and you should do it and you should try it. So there's 2 different types of stretches you can do. Well, first of all, you can like go to a clinician, go to a PT, and they can do myofascial release. So that's like the mechanoreceptors. They are actually a rolfer also. They're the ones that are touching your fascia and sending those signals to your brain. Otherwise, I'm going to show you what you can do at home. There are elastic stretches where, think of a rubber band, like elasticity, that's your waistband on your pants. The ability of something to deform its shape and then return back to its normal shape, its resting shape. So that's really important in like sports performance, just athleticism, and just feeling like a fluid moving human. And then there's also plasticity stretches, which are held for a longer period of time. And it is said that over time, that can actually cause new bonds to form between your fascial structures, which can possibly lengthen it. Again, research is still out, but it feels good and it helps. So let's go through one elastic and one plastic fascial stretch for each of those 5 major lines. Okay, first we have our superficial front line. So this runs from your toe extensors, so that's what pulls your toes up, all the way up your shin, your quads, your rectus abdominis, which is like the ab muscles, and then up through your chest and your sternocleidomastoid and part of your neck muscles. So if you want to stretch it, you'll do anything that does this kind of motion. With the elastic stretch, each repetition is about 1 second in length, and you'll do about 20 reps, 3 sets. So we're gonna do, also I think it also feels good to incorporate some arms in this one, but you're gonna do kind of a upward dog. So this is really stretching into my hip flexors, my rectus abdominis, and into my neck. So you'll do that, and you can either do bounces here, or you can do bounces from up dog to down dog, because this is now getting some of those arm lines we talked about. So you can go back and forth. Do about 10 of these. And it helps when you're in this position to squeeze your glutes. Squeeze your booty so that you're not really arching and compensating through the back and getting that crunchy feeling. So if you squeeze your glutes, it'll also help bring your pelvis in a correct position so that you're actually stretching your hip flexors and your quads. So the elastic one, let's do some bounces. Now, since that one didn't really work into the tibialis anterior or the toe extensors, our plastic stretch can get into that a little bit more. Or if you wanted, you could do the bounces on with your toes untucked instead of tucked. But for the plastic stretch, you're gonna hold it for 10 to 15 breaths, or I think 8 to 15 breaths. So you'll come onto you can start on your elbows in a sphinx pose, and then keep your toes untucked for this one. If that feels okay, you can push up onto your fingertips or onto your hands. And this is really a nice stretch through the stomach and hip flexors. You can kind of extend your neck. And then what you can do is bend your knees up and try to touch your toes to your head. And hold that for about 10 breaths. Now, the important thing is with these deeper plastic stretches with the longer holds, don't go to a place where you're super uncomfortable, because then you'll just tense up. So it's more of like start lighter, and then as your body relaxes, you can get more range of motion. Okay, next we have our superficial back line, which includes the back of your foot, coming up your Achilles tendon, your calf, hamstrings, up the booty, and then your erector spinae, so your superficial back muscles. So anything that includes more of a forward flex posture is going to stretch out the superficial back line. So if you're a beginner, I'd probably just do more of a seated or a standing forward fold. But if you want a little bit more of a challenge and to make it fun for the elastic portion, what you can do is you'll do a seated forward reach. So pull your toes towards your body. That will give more stretch along the back of your calves especially. So pull your toes towards your body while you reach forward. Feel this along your hamstrings, along your back. And then what you'll do, I might need more space, but then you'll kind of flip backwards into a plow pose. So for this part, I feel it a lot more in my back and hamstrings. Again, keep those toes pulling back the whole time. So here's what that looks like. And I usually have to warm up a little bit before I'm able to get into full plow pose. But for the plastic, the longer hold stretch, I want to get a little more into the back of my calves. So if you're able, come into a deep squat with your heels on the ground. Don't let them lift. If they lift, you might not be ready. And what you can do is just, with your knees locked out, with your hands behind your head, you can just do whatever you can tolerate for a forward fold. But if you're able, come into a deep squat, and then you're gonna let your whole body relax forward and kind of let your arms stretch out like this. From the side. So you should be pretty relaxed here. Can even feel it coming up the back of my neck. Okay, next we have our lateral line, which you guessed it, either the muscles bring us over to the side or the fascia can prevent you from going to the side. So includes your peroneal muscles, your IT band, your outer glutes, along your obliques here, your intercostal muscles, which are the small muscles between your ribs, which can get super tight. Feels so good to breathe into them. And then up through your armpit and arms a little bit. I love this one. What you're gonna do for the elastic stretch is come into a triangle pose. So your front leg, the toes are pointed forward, back leg, toes are at a 45 degree, and your hips are facing out to the side. So with this, even just doing that, I can feel it super well. But to bring it up a notch, you're gonna bring your arm and reach it over your head down towards the front of the mat. So like this, oh my gosh. I feel that so much along here. So do about 20 of these on each side. You can switch sides. Make sure you're breathing. And then for the plastic stretch, which is the one that you're gonna hold for a long time, pigeon pose, which is hard, but we're gonna do it. So for pigeon pose, if you're really bendy, you can have your shin parallel to the front of the mat. I'm not there yet, so I like to kind of flex my toes or point my toes and bring it at more of an angle. So one leg is going to be out here, the other leg is going to be straight behind you. Let me switch sides. So this is really working the outer glute, a little bit around the IT band as well. What you can do to bring it up a notch is you're going to side bend over here. So not only am I getting my glutes, I'm also getting my obliques and my intercostals. So you'll do this for about 10 breaths, nice and slow and relaxed. If that's too hard, just get into that triangle pose and hold it. You'll still get a good benefit there. Okay, number 4 are your spiral functional lines. So these are a little bit confusing. I recommend looking at a picture. But there's 2 lines that wrap around each other. So kind of starts in your arm, goes down your lat, wraps down your glute, underneath to your groin. See how it's just like, woo, all over the place. And then you have one on the opposite side. So it's going arm, down your lat, across your back, glute, and then kind of under your groin. Okay, so for this one, for the elastic one, you're gonna kind of do some javelin throws. So the weight will sink back into your back knee. This way you can get a bit of a inner thigh groin stretch. So when you bring it back, you'll feel a stretch here, and then propel forward, rotate your hips forward so that you're on the balls of your back feet, and then you're gonna kind of swing over to the opposite corner to hopefully feel a little bit in your lat as well. So inner thigh, rotate. Inner thigh, rotate. On the other side. So do about 20 of those on each side. And then for the plastic stretch, we're gonna get a little bit into the arms. So you're gonna lay on your belly and you're gonna have one arm stretched out to the side. So this is gonna be a pretty deep shoulder stretch. Now if you're able, you can roll onto your side. If that's too easy, you can roll onto your back so that your feet are planted. If that's too easy, you could wrap your right leg around your left leg, but I'm not there yet. So on the other side, you'll feel this through the arms. This one's actually looser on this side for me. So I can kind of start to bring my knees towards the right side of the mat. Whew. Feel that in my lat and in my arm especially. Another favorite thing I like to do for the spiral functional lines is like before, like if I'm warming up to squat or deadlift, hang on to a nice solid structure, or not, I guess you can do it midair, and then do kicks, kind of sweeping across your body. And lastly, we have our deep line, our deep front line. So a hugely important muscle in this line is your diaphragm. That's your breathing muscle that helps you breathe from your belly as opposed to really tight through your chest and your neck. So it's really important to focus on relaxed breathing with this, trying to let the belly poke out and then descend back down. Otherwise, think like really to the core of your being, the deepest core muscles, the deepest pelvic floor muscles, super deep in the groin as well. So anything that does sort of this like goddess pose or frog pose or happy baby, that's gonna get the deep front line. It's gonna be a really deep groin stretch basically with some relaxed breathing. So for the elastic portion, we're gonna do frog pose. So with frog pose, plant your knees on the mat and then your feet should extend straight backwards from there. If you're really flexible, good for you. This one is tough to get into for me, so maybe I'll go to this side. So you'll be in frog pose. If that hurts your knees too bad, you can fold up your mat, like triple layer it, so it's a bit more padding. Okay? And what you're gonna do, remember, don't go to the point that you're crying and dying because then your body won't relax. Go to a doable spot and then you'll just bounce backwards. If you want, you can come down onto your elbows. So you can do 20 reps here. You could also do more of a goddess pose bounce. So horse pose or goddess pose, your knees and your toes are pointed outwards. You're sinking low, and then you're gonna pulse here. That's tough. And then for the plastic stretch, what you can do is hold goddess pose or hold frog pose, what we were just in, or you can come into a happy baby. So happy baby is a similar shape. Knees out to the side, hang on to the outside of your feet, and then just sink into that stretch. If that's too easy, you can do one leg at a time, stretch the opposite one out straight, and then you can hold onto your toes and stretch out to the side, keeping both hips grounded. So on the other side, looks like this. So 10, 12, nice deep breaths there. And you're done. Okay, I hope those were super helpful. I hope they just gave you a few ideas that you can get started with. Grab a book, do some reading online. I highly recommend Dylan Werner's fascial elasticity and plasticity programs. Fascia is so important. It'll just make you feel like a brand new person. It's personally helped with some neck and hip pain. It's helped me feel more athletic, prevents injuries, all sorts of good things. You don't have to go through a strict regimen every day, but just kind of incorporate some of these movements throughout your day. Hope you loved it.